Hey, what's up everybody? This is Osterberg501 and today I want to go over the top 5 things that I think needed changed or added to New World. And I do think New World has a good foundation to become a successful MMO, but I think there's quite a few changes and additions that the game is going to need to ensure it has longevity. And I think that's one of the big reasons why a lot of players play the MMO genre, to play a game that's going to be around for years, to feel like you're playing in this living world that's always going to have players and always have things going on. Now, these are mainly my own opinion on things I would like changed and added into New World, but most of these also have been discussed pretty heavily by the community as things that they would like changed or added in. So at number 5, we have better questing. And I think this is the thing that has been agreed upon the most by the community, is that the questing in New World just isn't very good. It is all incredibly basic and can be improved pretty massively. I think the best thing that has happened to the questing of New World has been the voice acting, with the small amount of dialogue that every quest has on pickup or turn in, where the characters are actually voice acted. So that's a really big plus, but I still think the questing is really bad as it is right now. And the main things in questing are the main quests, then you just have some side quests, and then you have the town project missions, which you just go to the questing board in a town, pick up all these missions, and pretty much every mission in the game boils down to kill something, loot something, craft something, or go talk to someone halfway across the map and then come back. That's pretty much all it is. And even with the story being told, it's incredibly basic and doesn't create any notable stories that probably any of the players are going to remember. And there are many ways that they can make the questing system in the game much better, and especially with already having voice acting for a lot of the quests, they can continue that and massively improve the questing. So first off, cinematics. There are pretty much no cinematics in the game. Like if you go with pretty much any other MMO, you go World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, Guild Wars 2, even BDO, when you're questing, they will have cinematics at points in your questing where they will put work into these cinematics and either have maybe at the end of quest lines have a much bigger cinematic, maybe CGI, and then they will have the more in-game cinematics with notable characters, and these are usually more important parts of the quest lines. There's none of that in New World, and I think that's a really big way to convey a shift change in the story, show you how different notable characters would act, and show important events in that storyline. And another one of the really easy things to change is just change up the variety of the quests. All of the quests are completely bog standard basic MMO quests, which even though pretty much every other MMO also has these type of quests, just kill this many wolves, go skin these wolves, go craft something, go gather something and bring it back. All MMOs have those, or most MMOs have those, but most of the other top MMOs also have other quests mixed in with those to give it some variety. So the questing definitely needs a massive injection of variety to the actual things you're doing while completing these quests. And I would also put in making the quests a little bit more streamlined and more focused. And by this I mean, don't have a quest that takes you halfway across the map to talk to somebody, and then that person giving you a quest to run back to the other side of the map to then talk to somebody else. Those quests are absolutely terrible. Nobody likes those. It just becomes a walking simulator for a few quests with very minimal story or gameplay in between. And the last and probably one of the most important things they can do with questing, and I think this is also going to be true in general for the world building and lore for New World, is making more notable characters. The only notable characters that I would actually remember in New World are characters from the cinematic trailers that aren't in game. So your captain at the start, Isabella, and that's generally it. There's only a few characters in the world that most people will remember, and those are probably going to be more so from the trailers uploaded on YouTube to reveal the game and stuff like that, and nothing to do with actual in-game events. And I think that's something that really needs to be focused on, because if you go to any other MMO, a lot of the story and a lot of the really cool moments in the story, a lot of the big events are all focused on notable characters. Whether you have something like the Lich King, whether you have some of the popular characters in Final Fantasy, Guild Wars 2, BDO, ESO, all of these games have notable characters that you know how they act, you know the cool situations and events they've been a part of before. You remember the cool cinematics that they were the focus of, and that adds a massive amount of life to any MMO. And then at number 4, we have something that's a little bit more basic, but still has a massive effect on the game, and that's the need for better traveling. And I know they've talked about before not wanting to add mounts until the overall size of New World is expanded. So most likely when we get a bunch of new zones, they will have some mount system later on. And I don't think we really need mounts right now, but we do need better ways to travel. Because even though traveling and just moving around the game world of New World is pretty fun and doesn't feel like it's just a ridiculous amount of traveling when leveling up, because you always have something to go explore over there, something to go gather there, a quest to go do right there. Once you've done it enough and once you get into the end game, the traveling is going to start to be a massive hindrance on the game. And we see that from everybody reaching end game in the betas, even just reaching mid game. Some people start to be a little burnt out of having to travel 5-10 minutes of just walking or auto running somewhere. And I think there's a lot that can be done with that. But the main thing that I think would very much help with this is just give speed buffs on roads. So if you want to walk around the game world, if you want to go to the next town, if you want to go to the next quest giver, and you're really not caring about stopping to gather like every resource or whatever, you can just follow a road and get a movement speed buff. And they could also have this be some upgrade for a settlement. So say if you're at this part of a zone or in this zone, the settlements could have upgrades to upgrade the road. So you'd get, I don't know, maybe a 10 to 20% speed boost on basic roads, and then you upgrade them and get like a 5% increase for every upgrade of the road you have. And I think this would probably be the best solution for now, because something like mounts can affect PvP with people just running away on their mounts and being able to speed away from PvP really quickly. But speed boosts on roads don't make you as fast as something like a mount, and also lets you make that decision to just follow the road. So you just want to get there as quickly as possible. So you're not running through a forest at the same speed, having to jump over trees if you're not trying to gather anything. And specifically with PvP, this wouldn't give you any speed increased advantage over other players. If you're walking on a road in a PvP battle, someone else would just be following on the same road with the same speed. Because say if someone was trying to fight you and you get on a mount, they're still trying to kill you. So they're probably not going to be as focused as getting on a mount as you are. And I do think there are some other ways they can make the more tedious traveling better, but I do think just a speed boost on roads would probably be the best way to do it right now. And at number 3, I have more diverse character customization options. And with this, I'm more so specifically talking about combat customization, because in New World, it's pretty limited. It's just your weapons and weapon trees. You do have your gearing, but that stuff is more so based on passives and just passive procs and stat increases. It's not as big for changing the actual play style and customization for how you want to play the game. And I do think there is room for additional systems in New World. So maybe the expansion of weapon trees or some other system that allows you to customize different things about how you play the game, giving you different abilities or different statting that can change up how you play. But I think more specifically, I'm talking about changing weapon abilities or adding more options within the weapons. And by this, I'm talking about adding more roots, adding maybe more movement abilities in some of the weapons, and in general, just adding more weapon abilities or passives that allow you to counter or play around some issue you're having. So say if someone keeps running away from you in PvP, give someone this skill shot longer range route so you can keep up with them. Adding more light CC, maybe adding buffs to your dashing or evading in some of the weapons, and in general just adding more abilities for you to kind of specialize how your build's going, specialize your weapons a little bit more, and give more options to counter something in combat or to have an answer for a problem in combat. And at number 2, I have PvP changes, and overall I think there should be a much bigger focus on smaller to medium scale PvP and modes in the game, because I think that's truly where New World's combat and PvP shines, is when you're in smaller groups or medium groups, whether it be in open world or instance modes. Because once you get to 50v50 wars, especially with the current war system, the PvP and combat in the game kind of completely falls apart. You don't even need to have played any of the wars to just go watch the footage of the wars and see the massive glaring issues with with them. With the wars, it's essentially capture points where you'll essentially just see a back line of casters, which are mainly healers, and then a front line of people standing on the point of melee, where it's essentially 20 AoE healing circles below you, spamming every AoE you have until something happens and someone becomes overwhelmed. The large scale PvP in this game I don't think is near as good as the smaller to medium scale stuff. And I think a lot of players will have also seen this, because if you're running around in the world, say you're with a few friends and you come across another small group, that PvP is incredibly skill based and overall gives you a much better experience than sitting on a capture point with 30 other people with a dozen healing circles below you, just AoE spamming till somebody dies. And with that, I think there's some pretty easy systems that they can add into PvP to add some more of this small to medium scale PvP. So first off, and I think the best and most important system that can be added to New World is arenas, and that is ranked and unranked. You could do 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, 5v5. You could even do some slightly bigger PvP like 10v10 or something like that if you have bigger arenas. And ranked and unranked will give just a massive amount of content for a relatively simple system to add into the game. Because not only can you have people that just want to go PvP, play in ranked, play with their friends, and just have some PvP that you can earn some more basic rewards from, but then you can also have a ranked version where people want to min-max, make the best possible combination of players, and go try to climb the ranks. Then you could have better rewards, just like pretty much every MMO has, where you get better rewards as you rank up, and then you have exclusive rewards at the higher ranks that you can show off so people can know, oh, this person is really high ranked in arenas. And that just adds so much content to the game and so much replayability, like I said, with a pretty simple system. And to add on to that, a little bit more complex of a system, but something that I think adds a really interesting possibility for New World and that fits the aesthetic of the game really well, is having these arenas where people are going to be queuing in or teleporting to or whatever and fighting in their ranked or unranked arenas in. You can actually have players go to that arena in the world and watch the arena fights taking place there. So say if they had like 5 different arenas around the game world that all have their own aesthetic and are laid out differently, you could have players legitimately go to that arena area and watch the fights taking place in the arena. And then later on down the road, you could possibly add some type of gambling or betting system for those arenas. So say a match is starting up, there's an NPC at every one of the arenas where, you know, you can see the two teams in the arena waiting for the match to start, and then you can put a bet on which team is going to win and stuff like that. And I think that's probably a little bit further down the road if they were to do something like that, but I think it's a very cool possibility that really just fits the aesthetic of New World. And then at number 1, I have more difficult and varied content in general, with a focus of having more difficult endgame content. In general with New World, there's not anything that's incredibly difficult, and this is going to be more focused on PvE, because with PvP, the difficulty always lies in how good your opponent is. So this is going to be more focused on PvE, because with the PvE side of New World, there's not really anything that's that difficult. In the open world, enemies aren't incredibly difficult. You can get a lot of healing really easily in food and potions, and just generally fighting enemies, even of higher level than you, you're not really going to have a lot of chances to die. Even being able to pull a lot of enemies in New World and survive it isn't too difficult of a task. And even when adding stuff like the expeditions we currently have and pretty much any other PvE currently in the game, none of it is really that difficult. And I think they have a really good opportunity to add a lot of different systems and higher scaling difficulty to give players that want that challenge the ability to do that. Because I think a lot of people, especially that play mainly PvE in MMOs, want difficult content to strive to complete. And I think there's a good amount of systems that can be added for this. So first off, higher difficulty dungeons. I know there's been some talk of some data mine stuff, that's mutations for dungeons that could add different modifiers and add end game versions of all the dungeons. And that is absolutely something that needs to be added to the game. And even expanding on that, possibly adding some sort of time system for some of these dungeons, kind of like Mythic Pluses in WoW. That's always going to be a really good system to add. That's why that's one of the most popular systems in World of Warcraft ever since it was added. I think that adds a massive amount of replayability and essentially reuses the content they've already made, just with some few modifiers and giving higher level versions of that gear. And I think you would have a good chunk of the player base wanting to complete those dungeons on the higher higher difficulty, do the timed version of those dungeons for better rewards, and that would be a really good system to add that, like I said, would be reusing content that's already made. And then you have the kind of extended version of that in raids. Now, raids are one of the most popular and beloved things about MMOs. You go to World of Warcraft, you have one of the most popular community events of World of Warcraft being world first races to do the hardest versions of the raid and be the first ones in the world to complete it. You have massive amounts of guilds specifically being created for raiding. You have people that will legitimately focus their endgame completely around raiding, having their set days to go raid, getting the coolest gear from these raids or equivalent of the coolest gear from these raids, having these super challenging, really cool set pieces of bosses that can be really creative. And this just adds a massive amount to the end game of any MMO. Pretty much every MMO that's in the list of top popular MMOs have some amounts of raiding, and most of them have a ton of raiding. Pretty much every top MMO besides BDO has a ton of difficult raiding in their games. And usually raids are considered to be one of the big pillars of MMOs for the PvE side of their content. And especially for theme park MMOs, which is what New World has been trying to do for the past year plus, it is definitely a big staple for the end game. And another system I think they could add for the PvE side of the game that would heavily play into the strengths of New World is a solo or very small group boss battles that are very tightly tuned to be incredibly difficult even at the highest end of gear in the game. And I know they have the arenas right now to where you get the rare key and you go in the arenas and face some of these bosses in there, but these would be a little bit different to where there would be like 1 to 3 players and be incredibly tightly tuned to add an incredibly hard challenge. And these aren't something that you would be able to go do at all easily, and you would have to have a very well built build with very good gear, and you would have to play extremely well to beat them. Almost something reminiscent of the mage towers in World of Warcraft Legion. And I think there's a very interesting possibility with the solo play for the system, because you could add some really cool unique cosmetics for beating these incredibly hard challenging fights, which would add a lot of replayability for PvE players that want this really hard solo content. And even expanding more on that system, you could possibly add bosses that are specifically designed and required specific weapons to use against them. So you could say have a boss that only allows you to use a bow or something like that, and has a boss battle with boss ability specifically designed to be focused around a bow. And then say you could get a really cool cosmetic for bows, or maybe there's a fight specifically designed around like a life staff, and maybe you have to fight this boss where you have to use every ability of the life staff to their maximum potential and play around that perfectly to beat that fight. I think that type of system adds a massive amount of replayability and difficulty to where it's not really required to get the best gear in the game, but it gives a good reward in really rare cosmetics that a lot of people aren't going to have, and adds a really difficult challenge for the end game to keep players in the world and playing New World. So it's pretty much all I want to go over with some of the main things I would want changed or added into New World. Might have been a little bit rambly, but these are just some ideas. And like I said, I do think the game has a good foundation to be a really successful MMO, but it does need a lot of work to gain that longevity like everybody wants in an MMO. And also, I just want to mention that when talking about this stuff, I'm not shitting on New World or saying it's going to be terrible. The reason I'm making these type of videos is because I want New World to be good and have the longevity to be an MMO that people can keep playing for years to come, and not just be one of the dozens of MMOs that come out and die in a few months. And I think that's where a lot of the community, at least on something like Reddit, are kind of at right now with New World, where they think anybody that's criticizing the game or talking about what things they want changed in the game, that they think they're just shitting on the game and wanting it to fail. I think it's a complete opposite. The criticizing the game, talking about the things that we want to change, added in, is the best way to make sure New World is going to get better and obtain that longevity. So subscribe if you want to see more New World or other MMO videos. Leave a like if you liked the video. Leave a comment down below what you guys think about these top 5 things for New World, and thanks for watching.